Thank you, Madam Speaker. The more time I spend here, the more time I hear the word file. The mental health file, housing file, disabilities file, or the climate file. I can't stand it. Because this word file, it reduces deep systemic injustices into political speak. Because the fact is, the climate isn't a file. It's about whether we choose to continue living on a habitable planet. In the words of Bill McKibben, who's been writing and organizing around the climate crisis since the 80s, he would say, winning slowly is the same as losing. This morning we got a reminder that where climate scientists at the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change issued their latest warning. The co-chair of the report says it's now or never if we want to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. We must decrease and plateau emissions at latest by 2025. The scientists who wrote this report, this 2,900-page report, went on to say that they have a high confidence that unless countries around the world step up their efforts to cut greenhouse gas emissions, the planet will be on average 2.4 to 3.5 degrees warmer by the end of the century, sailing past the target to reduce by max increase by max 1.5. The UN Secretary General goes on to say, we're on a pathway to global warming of more than double the 1.5 degree limit agreed in Paris. Some government and business leaders are saying one thing, but doing another. Simply put, they're lying. And the results will be catastrophic. And so back at home, what do we have? A so-called emissions reduction plan that tells Canadians a fairy tale. That somehow we'll keep increasing oil and gas production, we'll give oil and gas $50 billion in a new subsidy for carbon capture and storage, a completely unproven technology, and the carbon intensity of their oil will magically disappear. What's actually true? One recent study from the Netherlands found that the majority of carbon capture technologies they looked at, 32 of 40, actually emitted more carbon than they captured. Or, more recently, over 400 academics and climate scientists and experts around the country shared that carbon capture is a false climate solution. Now, even if we take the government at face value, that there's $9.1 billion of new investments in their plan, and to be clear, there are some constructive investments in that plan. The unfortunate truth is that those investments are overshadowed not only by that $50 billion I just mentioned, but the $21.4 billion that of costs of which have ballooned on the Trans Mountain Pipeline, which intends on increasing oil expansion from 300,000 barrels to 890,000 barrels a day, ambiguity on their decision with respect to Baie du Nord, an oil drilling project off the coast of Newfoundland that wouldn't even begin until 2028, and which would allow for another 1 billion barrels of oil to be drilled. All of this means that this government is gambling with our children's future. And so from the parliamentary secretary tonight, I'm not interested in hearing what others have to say about the plan. The only bar that matters is that of climate science. And I wonder, knowing the hard work that she's putting in and her good intentions, whether she can tell us if she...
Secretary to the Minister of Natural Resources and the Minister of Environment and Climate Change.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I'm happy today to be able to rise and to speak about the emissions reductions plan because it's ambitious and it's achievable. It's the plan and it provides a roadmap across all sectors of our economy. This isn't about one file, as the member opposite just stated. It is about taking an approach across all sectors to reduce emissions and to make sure that we build a clean future, sustainable jobs, and a strong economy going forward. The plan is about healthier communities, reliable and affordable energy, good jobs, clean air, and it's important that as an early deliverable under the Canadian Net Zero Emissions Accountability Act, the plan is that roadmap that goes sector by sector with the measures needed for Canada to reach its ambitious and achievable emissions reductions targets of 40 to 45%, below 2005 levels by 2030, and net zero emissions by 2050 in a fair and affordable way. The scientific and economic imperative to reduce emissions is clear. As countries and businesses around the world race to transform their operations to net zero emissions, it is critical that Canada be a leader, not to be left behind. To create good jobs, grow a strong economy, and build a brighter, healthier future for everyone. Enhanced climate action in our country is needed today. Now, the member opposite mentioned, don't speak about the accolades from the outside world, but I think it's important to mention that it has received support from environmental groups and the scientists that work behind it. It has received support from climate scientists like Andrew Weaver, who was the head of the Green Party, I believe, in BC. So there is support across many actors, including industry, to show that this is a strong roadmap going forward. From transportation to the oil and gas sector to heavy industry, agriculture, buildings and waste, every sector in all regions has a role to play in meeting Canada's 2030 climate target. This plan includes, as was mentioned, $9.1 billion in new investments and a suite of new measures to help mobilize Canada towards a truly sustainable economy and a leading competitor in the global transition to cleaner industries and technologies. For example, the plan makes it easier for Canadians to switch to electric vehicles by committing $1.7 billion to expand the IZEV purchase incentive program for light-duty vehicles and to make zero-emission vehicles more affordable. Canada is uniquely positioned to be a global leader in this century of climate mitigation and adaptation, thanks to our abundance of natural resources, a highly skilled workforce, and a strong financial system. This plan builds on the strong foundation set by the Pan-Canadian Framework on Clean Growth and Climate Change and the Strengthened Climate Plan. Since 2015, the government has delivered $100 billion in investments for climate action, and these efforts are working. Thanks to the actions of millions of Canadians, we've been able to halt our once upwards trends of emissions curves and bend it downwards. This roadmap will build on this progress and chart the course to lowering emissions by 40% below 2005 levels. Carbon capture, utilization and storage, CCUS, is a significant opportunity for Canada. Projections show it will play a critical role in enabling a prosperous net zero economy in Canada by 2050. It is a tool in the toolbox, but it is not the silver bullet, nor have we said it would be. But it is an important tool for us to use. It's an important component that will help us to tackle emissions.
The honourable member for Kitchener Centre.
Well, Madam Speaker, if it's not a silver bullet, why are we giving them $50 billion for it? The fact is that this isn't about whether this government wants to pat itself on the back or cite others who are. To get to 1.5 means at least 60% reduction by 2030. This is the first plan that is saying, well, we're not actually going to do the range anymore. We're going to let go of the 45 part and aim for 40. But actually, the potential pathway in this plan only adds up to 36. And so the question to the Parliamentary Secretary is the same, is whether this government is going to choose to rise to the moment that we're in, to move past the partisanship of it all, and choose to invest in the kind of climate solutions that we know are required, not just for a potential pathway, but to ensure that we put together the proposals, the investments we need to...
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And it is important to note, once again, the emissions reduction plan does chart a course across all sectors. But the oil and gas sector is Canada's largest source of greenhouse gas emissions, and we won't be able to reach our target without significant contributions from our highest emitting sector. The emissions reduction plan presents modelling of the most economically efficient pathway to meeting Canada's 2030 target, and this modelling projects the emissions from oil and gas sector could decline by about 31% from 2005 levels to reach 110 megatons in 2030. This is a guidepost for action. and will guide the Government of Canada's work with industry, stakeholders, provinces and territories, Indigenous peoples and others to develop a cap on oil and gas sector emissions. Canada is positioning our industries to be green and competitive by helping industries adopt clean technology in their journey to net zero emissions. This is the work that we're doing, and Madam Speaker, we will continue doing it.